Hello and welcome back to my channel and my sewing room. I'm Patty and I go by Pattymac Makes everywhere online. Today's video is going to be about chain piecing, and I'm going to give you my take on how to do chain piecing and why it is helpful and important. Why do we want to know about chain piecing? So I've got a couple of things going on here on the sewing table. And over here, these are the blocks that we're going to sew. These are 5-inch squares. They are called charm squares, and they are going to wind up being 4-patch blocks. And I just did a video on how to make 4-patch blocks. I will link to that for you. So we're going to chain piece all of these blocks so that we can make our project, which will be in an upcoming video. But today, let's just talk about how to put these pieces together in an efficient manner. That's really what chain piecing is about, is being efficient. And something that we use in chain piecing are little scrap fabrics that we call enders and leaders. And you can see here under the machine, and let me just change that angle for you. You can see that under the machine I've got this little piece of fabric. My needle is down, my presser foot is down, everything's engaged and ready to go. And so what I have done is I have just sewn a short line on this leader piece. And why we do this is because I have sewn on the leader piece, and now I am ready to start feeding the actual quilt block that we want to stitch through the machine. So when you start with a leader, why is that important? It helps you to make sure that the thread tension is already set on your sewing machine. So if there's going to be any kind of a goof up with the thread, which, let's face it, it happens, it's pretty common, it's going to happen on this piece of fabric and not on the piece over here that's going to wind up in your project. So by the time you run through this little bit of fabric, which it's only about this wide, it's not a big piece, by the time you run through that, all of your little craziness that might happen with your thread, it's out of its system and it's ready to take your actual quilt block. So it sets the tension by using that leader. All of your goof ups are there, and you wind up in the long run using less thread, because instead of constantly sewing a piece, cutting, having all those thread tails and constantly dealing with thread tails, because you do wind up using an awful lot of thread when you bring the needle up and down. It uses more thread than you think. So when you're just consistently running it through, you do wind up using less thread, and that is important when you're sewing on these large projects. And another thing that will help when you chain piece like this is it will help minimize the tendency of some fabrics, especially if you're doing something on a point like a triangle. Sometimes that's going to want to get sucked down into your feed dogs. And if you're sewing in this manner, it really helps to minimize that. So let's start working on this, and I'll leave you with this. Let me just say this, and then we'll start actually doing it. Chain piecing will help you to save time. It's going to save the thread, and it's going to give you less headaches. And I don't know about you, but I'm all for less headaches. So, okay, let's get going. As I mentioned, I have all of my blocks ready to go. I'm going to start at the top here, and they're all laid out, they're all ready, and I'm going to just start feeding them through the machine. And I'm going to just go ahead and sew. We'll sew through, let's say we'll do these 4, okay? We'll just sew through these 4, and I'll show you what that looks like. normally you would think, oh, well, I'll backstitch or I'll sew right off and then cut the thread. But we're going to keep sewing. And we're going to just line up the next one. It's all ready to go. I'm going to just raise my presser foot to get this started. And here we go. I want you to see that all of the blocks will come off attached in a line. They're almost like a little garland. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just snip to separate them. And so you can see it's very, very little thread wastage, which is very nice. It's less cleanup for you. And then here is our piece that was the leader. Well, now it's going to be the ender. And we'll just put that to the side. And now all of your blocks are stitched, and we'll just take them over to the pressing board and press them to the dark side. And there's the start of your 4-patch. Here are 2 of those blocks that we just chain pieced, and I have starched them and pressed them out, and you can see how just absolutely beautiful they are. They will sew together wonderfully and make a really pretty final 4-patch block. That is how I use chain piecing in my personal quilting practice, and I hope that gives you some explanation on how you can add it into your own work. I also hope that you found the information on enders and leaders and how to use those helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. And in any event, I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for hanging out and watching, and I'll see you next time.